Alrighty, everybody. Thanks for checking out this video. James Cards FC here, and today we're going to be talking about something that's probably a little more fun than what I usually talk about, which is like methodology and theory and long-term investing. No, today we'll do something a lot more fun. We're going to talk about active investing for the 2022 World Cup this winter and how I would go about approaching it and how I think you should go about approaching it, and specifically thinking about what's already being priced in on some of the players. So, without further ado, we'll go ahead and get started. So, starting with the very important disclaimer, no financial advice. Opinions are my own through research, and I encourage you to challenge me on my opinions and do your own research as well. English is my main language. Any typos or mispronunciations are because I'm a dumb American, and Pop's prices and general information on this topic could change dramatically by the time you see this video. In fact, the World Cup could already be over, and I could look like an idiot with what I'm going to say today. And again, please do your own additional research. So, let's start off with where we stand right now. Today we are in April of 2022, and the World Cup is, I would say, slowly approaching at the end of this year as opposed to in the summer. The consensus on the market is that the World Cup will bring greatly increased activity to our soccer market, especially for the players that perform well. With that in mind, today we'll be talking about the priced-in effect and how it will impact prices before, during, and after the tournament. So, we'll be going over a few different players, the six of them here, as well as some general theory on what is going to take place in terms of pricing. So, to start off with this, we're going to have to talk about the priced in effect. So, in ultramodern cards especially, expectations for future performance are already priced into the market price for those cards. So, the example would be based on my video a couple days ago. The Holland sticker is currently at over 1K, not based on what he has done in his career already, but rather what he could do in the future and what the market could do in the future as well. So, we see this across all other sports in our market. You see this in the NBA. You see this in prospecting in baseball. This is a very common factor that is at play in terms of our pricing. And today we will be looking briefly at how the priced in effect impacted the NBA playoffs this past year. I think that's a good comparison here. The NBA playoffs is the biggest event in the sports card market, if we're being fair, in terms of price movements, and the World Cup, we're hoping, could be a similar event for us this winter. So, let's go ahead and take a look at expectations and priced in effect when it comes to the NBA playoffs for last year. So, example number one will be Giannis. So, this is the example of a player reaching their expectations. So, the Bucks win the NBA title in 2021, and they're one of the favorites to do so. Giannis cards should go to the moon, right? That's what we would assume is he won the tournament. His prices should go to the moon. No, that's not what happens at all. So, what actually happens is we have this pre-tournament hype phase right here where everybody is talking about, oh my God, this is going to be an amazing NBA playoffs. You got to get your investments in, blah, blah, blah. So, you'll hear it on every podcast. Sports card investor will be talking about it. The card talk guys will be pumping. Everyone's going to be pumping prices around this time. What happens in here is that despite strong team performance for the Bucks, hype is subsiding, especially because they're one of the favorites. People have already made their positions here, and the hype is just going away. This is an example of the market conditions being more important than the actual player performance. The Bucks are just holding to expectations at this point, and nothing special is going on. It drops all the way down here because the team looks like they're going to be eliminated in the third or second round of the tournament. I forget. Not that important, but it looks like they're about to be eliminated right here, so prices start crashing in lieu of that. But what happens in here is the team actually rallies to get out of that round, and then they rally to win the NBA title. And this is your exit point if you want to get out and make your money, right? Nope. Actually, the pre-tournament hype phase was the highest price for this card, and despite the fact that they rallied back to win the title, if you bought in here, you still lost money in what you would consider probably the best case scenario. Giannis looked like the best player in the world during the NBA Finals. He was completely unstoppable, and despite that, you still lost money if you invested in the pre-tournament hype phase. And what happens after that is the hype then subsides, and this is your new floor for the next few weeks or months, and you wait on market conditions and general interest to take care of the price from there. But if you bought in here in the pre-tournament hype and you held all the way through the team winning the title and through the hype subsiding, you lost $1,000, despite the fact that you were right with your gamble. So, moving forward to, I need to move myself on this slide. I'll move myself down here a bit. Devin Booker, this is an example of a player that exceeded expectations. So the Suns make a very unexpected run to the NBA Finals. They beat the Lakers in the first round, which not a lot of people thought was going to happen, and they actually make the NBA Finals. Booker's cards should go to the moon in this case, right? He definitely exceeded his expectations. No. So the pre-tournament hype phase is right here. It's sitting around $900. The Suns are performing surprisingly well, and despite that, the hype is only sustaining. This is where they beat the Lakers in the first round, and yeah, no bump from that. Even though that wasn't expected to happen, the prices are holding, not increasing. He sees increases in the later rounds when they start going to Western Conference Finals. They make the finals in here. They win the first 2 games of the NBA Finals right here, so it looks like they're going to win the tournament, and then they lose 4 straight, and this is the result. So, Suns lose the finals. Prices, this should say dip. They dip. Oops, sorry. Well, let me see what I'm trying to say here. Suns lose the finals. Prices dip to low before slight correction to new floor. Let's ignore that. That's a terrible typo. So what happens here is the Suns lose the finals and their prices go to their new floor before the general market conditions and interest in the market takes care of them from there. But if you invested this pre-tournament hype phase and you held it all the way through, despite the fact that Booker massively exceeds his expectations, you lose money. Your only chance to get out was in this range when it looked like, so when they make the NBA Finals and when it looks like they're going to win the NBA Finals, this is your exit point. If you got greedy at all in here, you ended up losing money. So with that, we'll move to the player that failed expectations and what happened because of it. So LeBron James failed expectations. The Lakers are knocked out in the first round despite being tournament favorites or one of the tournament favorites. So what happens to his prices? You have this pre-tournament hype phase right here, like with everyone. Lakers crash in the first round, drops 10K. The numbers don't look as bad just because we're dealing with multiples here, but you lost $10,000 here. This is crazy. So you lose $10,000, and then the price starts to fluctuate throughout the tournament. People remember LeBron James is an all-time great or something like that in here. Probably get some social media influence hype, and then goes back to its new floor, and general market conditions will take care of it from there. So that's what happens if your player fails to live up to expectations, at least in the most recent NBA playoffs that we have an example for. So what did we learn from this? We learned that in every case, no matter the expectations or the performance, you would have been better off selling prior to the tournament. There was short-term money to be made based on expectations versus performance gaps, but the window is extremely small. I'll go back to the Devin Booker example. This is the only one you could have made money on. You had to sell right here. You had about a 2-week period where they miraculously make the NBA Finals. You weren't allowed to get greedy. So you had about 2 weeks to make your money, and it really wasn't all that much. So even going back to the Giannis case, you had no opportunity to make money in here, no matter where you tried to exit if you bought in the pre-tournament hype. So we're going to talk about how this applies to the World Cup in 2022, and I will be I'm specifically going to be talking about common investment cards in the $50 to $5,000 range. The ultra high end for the players mentioned in this video will likely perform very differently to the common cards, but with 95% of the market playing in this $50 to $5,000 range, we're only going to concern ourselves with that today. So let's start off with players with high expectations. We'll start with Mbappe, who probably has the highest expectations of anybody in the tournament. The expectation is that Mbappe will win the World Cup and be the star of the tournament. Anything else I would consider not meeting expectations for not that. So let's take a step back here before I start explaining this. These are the expectations that the people buying the cards are placing on these players. This is not the general soccer universe is not putting this expectation on Mbappe, but the specific universe that we're playing in with sports cards, these are the expectations that they're putting on Mbappe. So anybody that's buying Mbappe cards pre-tournament hype is expecting this to happen. They're expecting him to win the World Cup and be the star of the tournament. So if the expectation is met, Mbappe's prices will hold their pre-tournament highs before slowly winding back down as interest fades. We saw this with the Giannis example. If the expectation has failed, and France goes out wherever they go out in the tournament, Mbappe prices will tumble down before a slight recovery, followed by a slower fall as interest fades. This is the LeBron James example. If the expectation is exceeded, I'm not sure how this is even possible, but Mbappe would need to put together one of the greatest World Cup performances of all time, and prices would increase above their pre-tournament highs before slowly winding back down again as interest fades. So, just as a result of the market placing the expectation that if you buy Mbappe, you're expecting him to win the World Cup and be the star of the tournament, I really don't know how he can exceed those to a point that his prices will increase dramatically like people expect them to. Even if Mbappe ends up having I don't even know, a Maradona level tournament, but he can't because France is too good. If he has an R9 2002 level tournament, is that going to 2-3x his market, especially on this base stuff? I don't think so. But again, that's just my opinion. I think it'd be nearly impossible for Mbappe to exceed his expectations, and therefore I think his prices are going to suffer because of it. So next up we have Neymar. In my opinion, probably the guy with the second highest expectations going into the tournament. Brazil are currently the betting favorites, and the expectation for people investing in Neymar cards would be that he would win the World Cup and be the star of the tournament. Again, I'm not applying this to his more ultra high-end or vintage stuff. So seems silly to say vintage, but his really rare 2009 rookies, I think those have potential to really explode if he meets his expectation just based on the pops, but we are specifically talking about cards like this. So if the expectation is met, Neymar's prices hold to their pre-tournament highs before slowly winding back down as interest fades. If they fail, Neymar prices are going to tumble down before a slight recovery, followed by a slower fall as interest fades. And if the expectation is exceeded, which again, I don't know how that's going to be possible with the expectations people are going to put on Neymar, but he would need to put together one of the greatest World Cup performances of all time, and prices would need to increase above would then increase above pre-tournament highs before slowly winding back down as interest fades. This is the same story that Mbappe is going to see, but people are going to place these unrealistic expectations on Neymar as well, specifically talking about cards like this in the market. Oops, skipped one. Let's talk about Christian Pulisic. This is a player that I would say has somewhat high expectations. The expectation, I think, in the general market is that the U.S. will make a deep tournament run, quarterfinals or better, while Christian Pulisic is being the clear best player on the U.S. team. In my opinion, if that expectation is met, that would mean the U.S. cleared groups, beat Senegal and Netherlands in their next matchup, and then lose to a tournament favorite. If you run out the brackets, it looks like it'll be Argentina at that point, but way too early to start thinking about that sort of thing. So if that happens, in my opinion, Pulisic prices would hold to their pre-tournament highs, maybe a spike after the groups before slowly winding back down as interest fades. This is the example that we see in the NBA playoffs, and just applying it here as well. So, if the expectation is failed and U.S. fails in groups, Pulisic prices will again tumble down before slight recovery followed by slower fall as interest fades. If the expectations are exceeded, the U.S. would need to make a miracle run into a top 4 finish at the World Cup. Prices will increase above pre-tournament highs again before slowly winding back down as interest fades. This is the Devin Booker example in this case, where the Suns make a miraculously run to the finals, but his prices still end up dropping. If the U.S. somehow wins the World Cup, I slipped this one in here, they won't. Prices could dramatically increase and hold just because even though people are very bullish on this team, I don't think anyone is honestly buying these thinking they're going to win the World Cup. So if they do, prices could increase dramatically and hold. But again, let's be honest, that's not going to happen. So moving forward to Kevin De Bruyne, another player with somewhat high expectations. I would say the expectation for him is that the Belgian team makes a deep tournament run, quarterfinals or better, while KDB is one of the best players in the tournament. So, if the expectation is met, Belgium needs to clear groups, make a quarterfinal before losing to a tournament favorite. I think it might be France at that matchup point, but I forget. It's not important. At that point, KDB prices I would expect to hold their pre-tournament highs with no spike after groups because of the expectations that are already there before slowly winding down as interest fades. If the expectation is failed, I think Belgium would need to fail in the groups or round of 16, and like all the other players, KDB prices are going to tumble down before slight recovery, followed by a slower fall as the interest fades. If the expectation is exceeded, Belgium would need to make a run to the World Cup final. I don't think making it into the last four is good enough for him. I think they need to make the World Cup final for these prices to increase. So prices increase above the pre-tournament highs before slowly winding back down as interest fades. If Belgium somehow wins the World Cup, which isn't completely impossible, I think prices could dramatically increase before fading, because I don't think people are buying KDB right now expecting them to win the World Cup. I think they expect him to have a good tournament. So if he wins the World Cup, I think you could see a dramatic increase in price. But again, even if Devin Booker and the Suns win the NBA Finals, I don't think his prices see meteoric rises, so that's probably not going to be the case for KDB either. Okay, we'll talk about a player with no expectations. These are the guys that if I was going to be investing in the World Cup active investing, I would be targeting these guys. So, players with no expectations. Frenkie de Jong will be one of them. The expectation is for the Netherlands to clear groups before getting bounced by England/Wales/the United States, whoever makes it out there. And no player performance is currently being expected for de Jong. So if the expectation is met, Netherlands is probably going to be bounced in the round of 16, and de Jong plays average. Prices will hold to their pre-tournament highs. They'll spike if de Jong has a moment, but they'll slowly wind back down as interest fades. This is where you get into the danger zone with players with no expectations. So if the expectation is failed, Netherlands would be bounced in the groups, and de Jong prices will tumble down and maybe never recover, because this is one of the only chances he has to be relevant in our market. By the time the next World Cup rolls around, he'll be too old to be considered a prospect, and let's be honest, what he does with Barcelona is not going to move the needle because of the position he plays. So if the expectation is exceeded, the Netherlands would need to make a miracle run into the last four of the World Cup, or de Jong plays like a superstar in a quarterfinal exit. This, in my opinion, would cause prices to increase above the pre-tournament highs before slowly winding back down as interest fades. But if the Netherlands somehow wins the World Cup, which I say they won't, we'll see if I look stupid here, prices could dramatically increase and hold, and this is especially the case for de Jong because you can make the case that he's more of a prospect than the other guys I was speaking about, so your upside here is probably higher than the other players in this expectation exceeded section. Okay, let's talk about Timo Werner. If I was investing, again, in the World Cup active investing, I would be targeting players exactly like this. The expectation for Germany is that they clear groups before getting bounced by a tournament favorite. No player performance is expected at all for Werner. So, if the expectation is met, that means Germany is bounced in the round of 16. Werner just plays average or scores a few goals, and prices hold to their pre-tournament highs. They'll spike if Werner has a moment before slowly winding down as the interest fades. If expectation is failed, Germany gets bounced in groups, and Werner prices tumble down and maybe never recover. This is one of his last chances to be relevant. If he doesn't do anything at this World Cup, it's probably over for Werner in the hobby. Although, if the expectation is exceeded and Germany makes a miracle run to the last four or wins the World Cup, with Werner, in this case, Germany makes a miracle run to the last four of the World Cup, with Werner being a key player. I would say that expectations being exceeded, especially if Werner is that key player. Prices increase above pre-tournament highs before slowly winding back down as interest fades. But if Germany somehow wins the World Cup with Werner as the key player, I think prices could increase dramatically and hold, because there are, in this case, absolutely no expectations on Timo Werner. When we talk about Devin Booker, there were some expectations on them. This is an example of a guy that has absolutely no expectations, so he has a ton to gain, not a lot to lose with his low price point. So if I was active investing, this might be a good shout, but we'll talk about that in the next slide. So, in conclusion, unless a team or a player vastly exceeds their expectations, both as a team or as a player, it will be very difficult for their cards to hold their pre-tournament pricing. We saw this in the NBA playoffs, and I don't expect this to be as big of an event as the NBA playoffs is for our general card market. So, I asked this question: would you rather be the casino or the gambler in this scenario? So, if you're planning on being the casino, I would sell everything before the tournament, and if you're planning on being the gambler, I would be targeting players and teams with low expectations. And when you get something like this to happen, don't get greedy. take your gains, take your profits. Don't get greedy up here and end up down here. If Timo Werner is making this massive run, Germany is in the top 4, and his prices have 3 or 4x'd because he had no expectations. Don't wait for that game to be played. Sell before it gets played, and be the guy that moved out at this range and not the guy that moved out at this range. So, that would be my recommendation. I might talk about this concept more in the future, being a casino or being a gambler. What I mean by this is, do you want to be the person that is supplying people with the tools to gamble, or do you want to be the person that uses the tools to gamble themselves? In this case, the cards are the tools with which to gamble, and the game that people will be playing is the World Cup. So would you like to be giving people chips to play that World Cup game in the form of slabs, or do you want to be the one buying those chips yourself? So just a theory to talk about there. I'll probably do another video on it. Once again, I thank you guys so much for checking out this video. Feel free to subscribe for more content like this. If you'd like specifically more active investing type content, I could do that as well. And once again, I thank you guys so much for watching. Leave a like, leave a comment, and hope to see you guys in the next video. Thank you.